If we approach traditional Tibetan society from a research perspective, taxation is not just an economic mechanism, it is the backbone of the entire social and political system. Drawing on the land and political system of Tibet by Pedro Carrasco, we see that taxation in central Tibet was deeply embedded in a hierarchical structure of landholding. The state, monasteries, and aristocratic estates all exercised authority through systems of obligation. These were not primarily monetary taxes, but rather grain, labor, and livestock contributions. The labor tax, known as ula, required households to provide transport, construction, and logistical services, sustaining both administrative and religious institutions. However, this system was not uniform or purely extractive. Taxation functioned through negotiated customary relationships, where economic obligation was inseparable from social belonging. If we shift westward, Nancy E. Levine provides a comparative perspective showing that taxation in border regions was even more flexible and socially embedded. In these areas, taxation was organized at the household level, often within polyandrous family systems. This allowed families to distribute obligations collectively and adapt to environmental pressures such as drought or limited pasture. Local leaders mediated taxation, making it more context-sensitive and less rigid than in central Tibet. Now turning to eastern Tibet, Amdo and Kham, we see both continuity and variation under the authority of Ganden Phodrang. While there were local differences, the overall taxation framework remained broadly consistent. In many areas, approximately 60% of families contributed to monasteries, while 40% paid taxes to the government through local officials. Corvée labor obligations, including ula, were generally lighter than those in central Tibet. Importantly, around 1750, the Ganden Phodrang introduced a form of tax decentralization in eastern Tibet. In Amdo, for instance, taxes were often directed to major monastic institutions such as Kumbum Monastery, also known as Tyre Temple. This reflects a blending of political and religious authority in fiscal practice. By the late 19th century, external observers also noted unique economic features. In the Land of Lamas, William Woodville Rockhill observed that officials often engaged in trade, acting as intermediaries in local markets. As he noted, people bought and sold through officials, effectively compensating for the fact that many officials were not formally salaried. So what does this broader comparison reveal? First, Tibetan taxation cannot be reduced to a simple model of exploitation. It functioned as a relational system linking economy, environment, and social structure. Second, regional diversity is essential. Central Tibet reflects a more formalized hierarchy, while Western and Eastern Tibet show how ecology, kinship, and institutional decentralization reshape taxation in practice. And finally, Tibetan taxation challenges modern assumptions. It demonstrates that complex societies can operate with limited monetization, relying instead on labor, reciprocity, and institutional networks. Understanding this helps us rethink not only Tibetan history, but also the diversity of human economic systems.